it's cool. I'm good to go.
So yeah, I guess that I was just saying is, okay, a lot of Jewish men who are like dissatisfied with like sort of the Galut state of Jews today, or like where where Jews are right now as we currently stand, sort of, victimhood fetishizing, kind of like weak, effeminate, spiritually in many ways. Like Weininger had like a lot of valid points, but like a lot of Jewish guys who are like dissatisfied with this in the West, they don't have an image of like, well, Middle Eastern, but specifically like Jewish masculinity, like within the context of like being Hebrew or being Levantine or being Jewish to draw upon. So they instead draw upon this like this Western thing. And I feel like JT and to some degree you and like some others kind of do that. And it makes sense because like which will you choose, the strong horse or the weak horse? But I mean, I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think they draw upon like the most famous Jewish cultural figures, which are like Woody Allen, Larry David, and there is some value to that because like those characters are sort of a celebration of like wit and cleverness, and that is valuable, but they're also like the antithesis of like strength and like masculinity. And I think a lot of, because American Jews are mostly Ashkenazi, they draw like very heavily from like Yiddish shtetl culture. Have you seen Fiddler on the Roof?
Yiddishkeit. Yeah, Yiddishkeit. Yeah. Oh, totally. I know what like Ashkenazi Yiddishkeit culture is, but like go ahead. Yeah. The only thing that I think is that like Yiddishkeit is not like a very masculine thing necessarily. Like, even look at the folk art of Yiddishkeit. It's not like let's say the great romantic paintings of Europe. It's not like the great Mizrahian.
It's like fitting in. Like Yiddish culture is like
synagogues either.
Right. I feel like Yiddish culture is like celebrates more than anything, or like at its core is just like fitting in, sort of, or like, I don't know if I'm expressing that properly. Like, it's about, I don't want to say like being sneaky because that sounds really bad, but like being sort of like doing whatever you have to do to like escape the Tsar's next pogrom or something. Or that's a really inartful way of explaining it, but
no, but that's where clothing comes from. It's emulating European, or European nobles.
Oh, like the Haredi garb, like that comes from emulating European nobles.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
It stems from emulating like the upper classes of or sort of like landowners and aristocrats of Europe, or it's a similar garment to that kind of. Maybe with like some like Near East in there, but generally speaking, it's basically just lifted from this old, outdated European version of nobility, kind of like, let's say, where.
That's so.
And that makes sense because sorry, go ahead.
It's so weird that they like retain that even in Israel, because it's so fucking hot there, and they'll wear like these black trench coats, like like on these hot summer days, and I just have no idea why they're so attached like to that outfit. Like what does it symbolize?
How do you feel how do you think I feel when I see Mizrahi? Yeah. How do you think I feel Jews wearing that shit in Israel and they don't even have Ashkenazi ancestry and they have nothing to do with it? How do you think I feel? I think it's literally annoying and silly and
it's so retarded. Like,
nonsense.
Oh, sorry, you're breaking up.
And it doesn't even look cool. It isn't even aesthetically pleasing. Like it doesn't even look cool. A dish dash of normal clothes would look cooler, literally.
No, it looks like totally retarded. Even Duvid looks like a retard. He just looks like a fucking clown. Like, I hate that. I hate like the hyper religious aesthetic. There's just something about it. Like, it's just so like non-masculine to me. I don't know if that makes sense.
But the thing is, what's so interesting is like, how did Bar Kokhba look? How did, Meir Kahane look? How did like Du Nuas look? How did, how did Sinan Reis look when he fought the Europeans alongside Barbarossa with the Ottoman fleet? See, the thing is, we don't know. There is no, as I said, the most, quote, traditional Jews, their, quote, tradition is more conservative than reactionary in many ways. So their tradition is more about, quote, tradition, is more about conserving the Galut than looking to, our ancient ancestors in, Eretz Yisrael, defending our indigenous land from colonialists and having our own flourishing, proud Hebrew culture. No, it's all influenced by like, oh, all these like half of the things they're like, oh, you must follow this law, you must follow this law. It's like, no, this law that they think is as important as the Torah was invented in a lot of instances, like the Ashkenazi diaspora, came up with it, and then it like things like this is just one example, but like the polygamy laws like came up within the Ashkenazi diaspora and then trickled back to the rest of the Jewish world like over time. Like and that's just one example. Yeah, anti-polygamy. That's just one example, but like,
that's what I think is worth preserving. Yeah. I think there are actually several like cultural artifacts of European culture that are worth preserving. Like I think polygamy is.
You're a monogamy cuck. You're a monogamy cuck.
I am. No, I mean, just the most stable societies practice monogamy. I mean, I think polygamy. I don't know how far back.
You're a monogamy cuck.
I mean, like, what happens when you have polygamy though is you have a few men that have like all the women, and then a bunch of disgruntled, like lonely men who start revolutions. Like, I think creating the most stable societies requires having just one partner.
Interesting, like social planning way of looking at it. I respect your take. That's valid. That'll make me my autiste mind has been given a little bit of a jog with that, and I'll go back to the drawing board. But for now, I just in principle, like sort of, I don't see why the manner in which we live today should be any way different than that of our ancestors. And most people were monogamous back then. It was just that there was an option of polygamy for particularly successful men if they could take care of their wives, for instance.
Well,
let's not get in the weeds about polygamy. Sorry.
I mean, I was going to say that still exists, like effective polygamy. Like Donald Trump is like, de facto polygamous because he's had so many wives, but he only has one at a time, I guess. And even that, I don't think is necessarily. I think there is still value in having like a single partner.
Yeah, no, there's something romantic about it. No, I agree. I see what you mean.
Although, like,
I just think that polygamy is better than what you're describing as functional polygamy, or what a lot of men's sex drives leads them to end up doing, which is commit affairs or have entire second families independently. I think that a healthier event for this, if they can support such endeavors, I feel like it would just be better if they had 2 wives or 3 wives. It makes a lot more sense. And although there might be conflict between the women, I think that dude, I'm shilling for polygamy. Like, this is it. This is me, like, actively, like, making a serious defense of polygamy. Here it is. You wanted it. Babylonian Hebrew defense polygamy. This Mephistopheles Lux.
I'm always surprised there are people, like, watching the most, like, obscure streams. Like, 2 people. I guess that's us and then Jimmy Ross. Whoever that is.
No, there's... No, neither of us are watching. It's Jimmy Ross and one more. And then some nice. Wavering in and out. Nice. Yeah, dude, the Blue Lizard is like a very esoteric channel. Like, this is not mainstream Babylonian Hebrew. This is like Babylonian backwaters. Yeah, if anyone's watching this, they should share the stream. By the way, like share this with all of your fellow Goyim and non-Goyim. Get the word out there. But you were talking about masculinity.
Like,
sorry, what proportion of my audience is Jewish? A lot.
Yeah, you think so? Like,
more than the average YouTuber.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, Jews are curious people. Like, there has to be more than just like 3 people that have gone down this sort of like alt-right rabbit hole. Like,
dude, see, here's the thing. It's like, all right, see here. Well, call it what you might. All right. Here's the thing. There are lots of Jews who have ideas that are either reconcilable or are some way in line with thought that could be considered traditionalist, perennialist, identitarian, reactionary, monarchist, et cetera, or like there are lots of Jews here, and they just sort of stumble by my channel. A lot of the Jews who find my channel are Israelis or diaspora Jews who are in a situation rather similar to yours or mine, and they're questioning a lot about their current life. I also have some people who follow my channel who are like diaspora Jews who are very like sort of like almost like borderline sort of Kahanist diaspora Jew types who are like very disgruntled and have a very strong sense of identity. But usually it's like Israelis and like confused diaspora Jews who are like saying like kind of like teetering on the edge of making a choice between like wanting to go full bore assimilation, like pro-West sort of, or like maybe like sort of a repatriationist stance. More the former, but I have had a few other repatriationists come and talk to me, which is interesting.
Yeah. How widespread do you think that belief is?
repatriationism or just to hello? Oh shit. Hello? 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 Oh, sorry. I guess the hangout just like quit out or something like that. But I guess I was saying, yeah, you'd have to be very ideologically driven to voluntarily repatriate from a country like America.
Hello?
Yeah, it'd have to be very ideologically. You'd have to, one, have a fair amount of resources, or at least be somewhat comfortable, or have a good situation planned out for you, or two, be very passionate, either in a religious or otherwise ideological sense, in order to be a repatriationist. Like me, both of those things are fairly applicable, and I really am just super passionate about not having my kids be like stupid, atomized, cosmopolitan New York types. Like, as fun as it is, it ends up like after a while it isn't fun, and it's just sort of like a hellish nightmare in a lot of ways. And
that totally makes sense.
And I don't want them to be raised atheist for the same reason. And also it's just like, I view it as a moral good. Like repatriation, just simply as a principle, I view from a secular angle or from a religious angle is like one of the ultimate moral goods in like a million ways. It's like anti-brain drain. Like, I'm helping my people.
I used to think like almost exactly the same as you, that like but for slightly different reasons. It was because I did have to, eventually concede that diaspora Jews were causing a lot of harm to like white societies. And I thought like, well, the only solution then is for the people to separate, and then either side could be happy, and then they could have good relations because they're apart from each other. And so I felt like it was the most ethical thing to do for that reason. But I've become slightly more optimistic recently that it's possible for like, some degree of assimilation and coexistence between Jews and whites. But my optimism definitely fluctuates on that question. I think like
2,000 years disagrees with you, buddy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, because there are Jews who have assimilated in that period. You just don't really hear much about them anymore.
Right. I guess because it was a successful assimilation or whatever. I do think that
the truly successful assimilations are the silent ones.
That's the best way to put it. Yeah. I think that like if you're a hyper-religious Jew, then it's really hypocritical not to be in Israel, because it's like you have your foot in one door, or whatever the expression is. Like you can't live in both worlds. You can't be like a super strong nationalistic Jew and then also like want to be like an American. I don't know. I just hate the people who try to like combine those identities. I feel like that's what pisses like Native American, like white Americans off the most, is when Jews try to have it both ways.
Can we talk a little bit about secular Duvidism, as I would describe it, or basically ideology of fetishism of weakness, lack of traditional masculinity that doesn't revolve solely around intellect or humor or like wealth, basically, or like things like that. It's like let's talk about like the sort of like Galut mentality, for lack of a better term. The way in which the Galut can physically, aesthetically sort of manifest itself, both in the physical way in which Jews appear and dress and carry themselves and talk and look, and also manifest itself in our culture. Our culture is merely borrowing a Western man's clothes or borrowing an Arab man's clothes in a lot of instances. Literally, like, we borrow their cultures in some degree, but we'll always be a second-rate imitation. We'll always sort of be like, I don't want to just be like a weird-looking white guy in a hat. Okay, no, like we have our own proud, rich, like Levantine history, and it's like, but like the thing is, this whole sort of like weird white guy with a hat, like lame, kind of anti-masculine, pro-victimhood thing.
I fucking hate it. I think for so long,
tell me about it. Like, because aesthetically, it didn't resonate with me. My first distaste for Jews, as it were, is like literally my visible like seeing of, I guess, what I can describe as like this aesthetic, and just being like, this isn't cool. It's not cool, you know?
No, definitely isn't. I think it's totally adaptive too, because Jews were persecuted for so long. They had to develop a kind of like public cultural face, and that face had to be one of like sort of harmlessness, like, so I think Woody Allen, like, is one of his main qualities is like, oh, look at me, I'm just like this harmless kind of doofus. Like, I feel like that's what that's the image they kind of try to project to the world of like is like, you know, we're just like this harmless, meek kind of people. Don't worry about us. And I think a lot of Jews have internalized that. And I think that's the source of like some weakness.
Yeah, I totally think that that's a large part of it. Are there any other factors that you think come into play here?
I can't really think of any off the top of my. I think you just have to look at the kind of breeding patterns that were incurred. I mean, it is true that for most of the diaspora, probably it was the scholars that had the highest odds of reproduction, but just because of how the culture was structured. I don't think it was like
and other proto white collar jobs.
Yeah, well, I think even prior to the diaspora, Jews were a very white collar people. They were very like bureaucratic. I actually think that the religion itself is kind of a blueprint for creating high IQ people, just because of the kind of breeding that it encourages. So I think there is something built into like the Jewish psyche to be sort of like actuarial or whatever the word is, like sort of detail-minded.
We are a people of priestly aristocrats, and what's interesting is there's an ancient description of the indigenous Levantine peoples before there was even conception of Jew or Phoenician, really, and that description is, or actually, hold on, this description actually comes from. I don't know when it comes from, but I think that it's describing all Levantine people, including Syrians, Jews, and Proto-Lebanese, like Phoenicians. And basically, it says, I think, here, let me get the description. Hold on, let me pull it up. This is a neat little tidbit. Give me a moment. Here. Wait 1 sec. This is gold, okay? I think that this really sort of illustrates how even before Jews were Jews, as it were, I think that there's been this common trait to peoples of this region that's persisted to this day. Technical difficulties. My apologies. Sorry, just waiting for Peter to come back. Let me read the quote.
Hey, hello, sorry, welcome back. I got cut off. Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem. The quote says, "Why the Egyptians are more intelligent and more given to crafts, and the Syrians unwarlike and effeminate, but at the same time intelligent, hot-tempered, vain, and quick to learn." And this group was a description of group including Syrians, Lebanese, and Jews fall under this jurisdiction, this broader category, Syrians. So those traits, even though at this point they weren't even specific to Jews, like there was a common trait within civilizations of the area to be more urbanized, more intellectual, more mercantilic because of the location of the Mediterranean.
As far as I know, cities were born like in the Middle East, right, or like around that region. So it could just be that Jews.
Yes, indeed.
Like Jews are just designed to live in cities,
that kind of OG Middle Eastern thing. Yeah, exactly.
The Jews are just like primed to be city dwellers or something. Yeah. How much of what I was saying before did you catch about like storytelling? Not sure.
It cut out.
It might have just cut off.
Redo that. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think one of the defining qualities of Jews is their capacity for storytelling. And I think it's why Christianity spread so quickly, because as far as I know, Christianity didn't spread through force, but people voluntarily, at least in the Middle East, converted to it. And I think it's because Jews are like so uniquely talented at telling stories, and I think it's why they dominate Hollywood too. It's just because there's something about Jews and telling stories. They just do it really well. It's actually, Jordan Peterson, like
Ooh,
a key part
interesting.
of his. Yeah,
I like
Jordan
that take.
Peterson. Yeah, and Jordan Peterson says that the best method of persuasion, or this isn't like an exact description of his beliefs, but like he thinks that one of the best ways of communicating ideas is through stories, and he thinks that it's like one of the most potent ways to like transmit like memes, and I think that that's why Jews are like can be so persuasive, is just because of their capacity to tell stories. I don't know if that made any sense, but
no, totally, and that's really interesting. I've never considered it like that before, but it's interesting to think about. What stories do you think Jews have been telling? What story have we been telling ourselves in the secular diaspora, would you posit, and in the religious diaspora? What story have we been, what narrative have we been telling ourselves?
I think it's honestly a whiny sort of like, pity me, like.
Yeah, it's like feminine victim bullshit, basically.
Yeah, it is, yeah. I don't know how much, I mean, even to be honest, like, even the biblical stories about Moses, and like I just watched The Prince of Egypt, and even to some degree, that like a lot of aspects of Judaism pissed me off. Like the whole idea of like the Exodus was like, well, God will save us, and like because like the Pharaoh is treating us like shit. Like I feel like it's an appeal for pity, and I hate stories that celebrate like pity and being pathetic, and I feel like a lot of biblical stories do.
A lot of them do, but a lot of them don't. And keep in mind that we've had an entire Galut's worth of time to interpret those stories in that manner. Because for me, when I first read the Torah, and I've only read the Torah once and it was in English, I basically told myself until I learn Hebrew, I'm not going to read over it in full again. And until I have someone more knowledgeable present with me, someone probably, hopefully a rabbi, but at least someone from an Orthodox background who's very well learned. I mean, it's like, but like the way that I read it is like, it was a first bit was about like Middle Eastern genealogy. Like it was talking about how Jews and Arabs share a common ancestor in Abraham, Abba Ram, the Great Father, and the Great Father created like Jews and Arabs and European Mediterraneans and stuff, and like that actually makes sense, like in terms of history, like ancestrally, like if you look at genetics, Jews and Arabs do share a common male lineages, and then it's like it's like there's that part, and then it goes on to like all about like the state of Israel and how it's so important and how we need to get to the land and how we need to preserve the land and fight for the land, and then like there was even like there's human sacrifice. And it's all about like sort of like sacrificing to like and it's not just sacrificing for God, but and fighting for God, but also about the great distance between man and God, and how there's this unbridgeable chasm. And I just found it to be this incredibly reactionary, incredibly blood and soil moving work. And like there is that whiny tone that's present in a lot of reinterpretation that's been done sort of in the Galut. And that is one way of looking at it. But just as you can look at it in that way, you can also extrapolate from it this very reactionary take. And perhaps because I was coming into it with the mindset of, like a young man, a disgruntled young man with lots of testosterone at the time when I was reading it, I was like, wow, this is like this sort of like masculine kind of identitarian reactionary thing. But like,
Definitely.
To me, it makes a lot of sense to interpret it in that way. And think about it. What about the zealots, the Sikari, when they were fighting the Romans, or Bar Kokhba? What was he thinking of? Was he thinking of, oh, wow, we're so weak? He was thinking of like, no, about like standing up and fighting. Like, I don't know, like I hate the passivity. The Galut, literally, like Jews edited the religion. We edited the religion in the Galut. Like rabbis edited the religion to make it more passive in the Galut. Like that to me is totally like unacceptable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think it probably morphed to suit whatever needs the, I mean, just as a historical document, it's really interesting to see how it morphs as a function of like the circumstances of the Jews at the time, like how what the biblical edits were in response to each sort of like external threat.
No, I agree. There is that component. I mean, listen, I get it. Like when in Rome, I get it. But like, I hate how that becomes like the canon, as it were, of Judaism. Like any Galut edition becomes canon Judaism. And it's like, no, do you really think that this is what our ancestors would have approved of? Like I ask any like autistic Orthodox Jew who's watching this, I mean, I'm not talking about people like Reactionary Jew who are sympathetic to what I'm saying. I'm talking to like there's this guy, this Persian Jew. His name is I forget, like Judas Star 250 or something like that. And then David / Judas Star Chi 250. Like, listen, I love you, and you're my Hebrew brothers, and you're my Jewish brothers, but do you not think our ancestors would look at all this autistic Galut nonsense and be like, this is weakness? Like, do you know who our ancestors are? Our ancestors had like amazing kingdoms and like this, you know, like they were proud of, you know, proud like in their own land. Like, look at the Hasmonean dynasty. Would the Hasmoneans be happy? Would King Daud be happy? Would what's his face? King Solomon, or would Shimon Bar Kokhba, would any of our leaders, would any of our greatest warriors be happy with what is going on right now? I don't think so. We are not just a people of the mind. There is so much more to us than that. And we you know, we need to, it's like, okay, it's like, do you know video games like min-maxing? It's like we min-maxed for like cunning and intelligence, and then we completely ignored like strength, health, like defense, stamina, dexterity, you know, stuff like that. And it's like, and it's like, or it's like if you don't work out, you atrophy. It's like Jews have atrophied over years and years and years. It's like Jews and Arabs started out at the same point, except you know how sometimes in cartoons you have those people, it's like to show the strong guy who isn't that smart, it shows the dude who's like really buff and has like a small head and like a big jawline and a little pea brain. And then you have the dude who has like the big, huge brain and like and like the little tiny body. It's
Twiggy
like,
body,
you know, like Pinky, like Pinky in the Brain or something like that. It's like, except more extreme. Like you have like the big guy with the little brain and the little guy with the big brain. It's like Jews and Arabs started off at a point, or Jews and Arabs in the Levant started off at a point, like kind of similarly. But like what happened is like Arabs kind of like went because of the Islamic like breeding pattern, because it's like the most alpha virile like male raiders got all the women and had the most women and had the highest status in society and had the most goods and could pass on their bloodline the most. And then Jews, we had the people who were, well, this has been going on since the beginning, like you said, with like having a more mercantile and like intellectual and priestly society. But like because of the diaspora and taking on these proto white collar jobs, the Jews that had the most kids were like these, you know, it's like atrophy over generation and generation. And we ended up being the dude with like the big brain and the tiny body. And you know, it might, maybe being smart is nice, but listen, it's not we need to have more. We need to have the body, as it were. And this is what happens when you become disconnected from land, when you become a diaspora.
Yeah, I mean, Jews, like their current, you know, form or iteration, like, I think it's just a consequence of having to adapt to a bunch of different societies, you know, over such a long period of time. I think that, I mean, I've actually heard that even like 2,000 years ago, a really good portion of the Jews was outside of the diaspora. I think, like, I don't know.
Yeah, because we were mercantile and we were trading.
Yeah.
Just like the Phoenicians who set up, let's say, Carthage. Carthago was a Phoenician outpost, and just like how that happened, Jews would also set up outposts. We set up outposts in India in the time of ancient Israel, and a community exists there to this day that still has Middle Eastern DNA. And the same thing is true with East Africa. And Jews we would set up these communities and outposts everywhere, and on you know, in Arabia, and even like the Lemba people couldn't arguably be traced back to this point. It's like like we were a mercantile people. Don't get me wrong, but it's like we were never like cucked, like diasporic, landless, wafting with the wind.
I mean, it could be just that the period, because every group kind of emerges out of like a tribal state, like a tribal fighting warrior state, and it could just be that Jews exited that period of their history a lot earlier than other people. So the only documented stuff is the more mercantile stuff.
We were never really truthful, and that's fine. We have just completely lost our warrior aspect. See, here's the thing. There was always a facet of our people. Like, you know, there were always the less educated Jews who weren't really scholars and whatever, and they lived in the mountains, and they might have been kind of like the Jewish, you know, rednecks or white trash or whatever. You know, it's like, you know, like proto-Arsim. They might have been proto-Arsim, all right? They might have been proto-Arsim, but so what? The Zealots and the Sikari, they charged down from the mountains and defended us from the Roman colonialists. The point is, like, we lost any aspect of that fighting thing in our culture. Like the peoples of the desert were the raiders and the attackers, like the sort of Islam type people. Like a lot of people in the Hijaz and in the Fertile Crescent and in the Levant, especially the Levant and especially the Fertile Crescent, had been urbanized for a very, very long time at this point. Arabs and Jews and Aramaic peoples and other Phoenicians and other groups. We were never really starting off as a warrior people, or at least we were. The earliest advanced agriculture started in the Levant. So let's just say that we were civilized very early. Jews are one of the oldest civilized, advanced peoples in the world.
Well, I think it's possible to have like a balance between the warrior side and the intellectual side. Like there is that sort of trope of like the warrior, like intellectual warrior or whatever. Like I think
I think Jews should aspire to that. That should be a Jewish archetype.
Definitely, yeah.
The sage, the sage warrior, the warrior prophet, the warrior sage.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean that's like the Roman, the Roman ideal, right? Like the wise sort of fighter, like.
To a degree, but you could also say it's the Jewish ideal. I mean, it's not the Jewish ideal. The Jewish ideal is sort of like the priestly aristocrat, right? But which I respect as an archetype. But I also think that just below that, as it were, in terms of hierarchy, if we're going to do sort of like a new caste system for Jews, it's like you have the priestly aristocrats at the top, and then below that, at least in terms of moral worth, is where I would place the people who, are the, what do you call it? Okay, there were numerous people who rose up, whether they claim to be the Messiah or were heralded as the Messiah or not. There are numerous instances of people who were both rabbis and anti-colonial freedom fighters against, let's say, Rome or Greece or Persia or any number of European powers. And I think that, again, we have archetypes we can draw on of warrior sages within our own culture. It's just that people don't know this. Do you know who Bar Kokhba is? Most people don't know who Bar Kokhba is, the son of a star. Did you know who he was before I told you about him?
I had no idea.
It's a shame. Ashkenazi Jews need to know this stuff. Ashkenazi Jews are so deracinated.
I don't know shit.
All Ashkenazi Jews have of their Hebrew identity / Jewish identity, for the secular Ashkenazi Jews, oftentimes all you have of your Hebrew identity is the part that's actively corrosive to Western civilization, which is the whole, the Holocaust, coalition of the oppressed, side with minorities against the West, it's we were scarred by colonialism and the Holocaust and Western nationalism. Literally, that's really
a few years ago, that really started to push me away from any sort of Jewish, a connection with the Jewish identity, because I just saw how attached they were to oppression bullshit and victim mindset and stuff. And but recently I have started to see that there is an alternative to that.
What do you think of my vision of pushing, giving through the idea of both in the diaspora and in Israel, the concept of Hebrew identity, and also emphasizing more the fact that sort of our origins, looking at our ancestry, looking at our history and origin in the Levant. I think that this might be a powerful alternate vision for Ashkenazi Jews. Now, listen, always Ashkenazi Jews give me pushback on this, because I'm a Mizrahi Jew. So the whole thing of naturally slipping into the idea of, Jews are Middle Eastern, duh, thing comes way more naturally to you than it comes to a lot of Ashkenazi Jews. But I think that Ashkenazi Jews, they don't even know what they are. They think they're just funny looking white people. I literally had to explain to Ashkenazi Jews come from Judea. The reason why you got a big old nose and frizzy woolly hair and dark features and Italian. A tan is because you're not, well, actually, you might have a little bit of Italian mixed in there, because Ashkenazi Jews did certainly mix.
Yeah, they lived in Italy for a while, yeah. Well,
exactly. And there was mixture there. Yeah. But the point, exactly. But the point is, origin is in the Levant, buddy. I think that this is, because if there wasn't the Jewish diaspora, Ashkenazi Jews would not exist. Even if you know what I mean? Their whole identity, everything about it from a sociological, anthropological point of view, Ashkenazi ethnogenesis began with the entering of basically of these sort of Middle Eastern men into Europe. And I was arguing with Thinking Ape in a comment section about this, and we had an interesting discussion. But I'm just curious to hear what you think about this alternate vision that I have for Ashkenazi Jews, as opposed to assimilating.
I definitely like it. Yeah,
because I want
agree
you
with it.
guys,
I think,
like, I want you to be with us. Like, don't like fade away. Like, you are Levantines, you are Hebrews, you are Jews. Like, rejoin your Mizrahi brothers. You are part Mizrahi.
Right. No, I think that's a valuable vision for Jew. I mean, especially in the Middle East, you can't survive without like a fighter mentality. So no, I think that should supplant whatever existing like cosmopolitan identity that Ashkenazi Jews currently have. I think as far as convincing like Western Ashkenazi Jews of that though is going to be difficult because they, a lot of them really do feel like any other white people, and they marry out and they have no connection to like the religion whatsoever. So they're going to be a harder sell, I think. But there are, like the people who are confused and sort of, I think they could be persuaded of that sort of mentality.
What has your relationship been with both your Jewish identity and your Hebrew identity? And just talk a little bit about your story, because you were saying a lot of things that resonated with me. For instance, your initial aesthetic rejection of Galut, diaspora, American, Ashkenazi culture, both secular and Orthodox, on an aesthetic, visceral ground, looking at that and saying, like, lame, basically. I had that impression, and so did you. And I think that this has to do with the fact that we are, for Jews, like, think about it, like, both of us are closer, let's just say both of us are closer to 2 meters than 1.5 meter. We're both, is that correct? Like, you're fairly large Jew, correct? Like, tall for a Jew.
I don't know meters. I think I'm about 6 feet, maybe 5'11".
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you're almost 2 meters. Like, you're like, okay, so you're like tall for a Jew, and you're like you listen, and like you can hear it in your voice. Like, you have a that isn't like all quavering and has some like weird little like lisp or speech impediment, like a lot of Jews do. Like, just like,
that's so
what I mean?
It's true.
Like, you have the true, like, you have the aesthetically. Yeah, like, you have more of a goy aesthetic in a lot of ways, like, from what I gather from you. And I think the same is true for me. Yeah. Like, I'm like a big guy, like, I'm tall, you might not tell it from my voice. Like, I probably seem like an autistic, big brain nibba cuck. But like, I'm like not this fucking little effeminate dude. Like, I'm actually like big and like normal looking and like have a beard and like a defined jawline. It's like these, you know what I mean? It's like, I think maybe it could be like even like a biological thing that like people like us look at Judaism, and because we're not like these bugmen soy boy types, we're like what the you know what I mean?
True.
Like, we're not the, like, David maybe was right when he was saying, now he was doing it with like the light eyes dark eyes dichotomy.
Yeah,
but I don't
what he was saying
even
pissed me off though. Like how he was saying like he's the model Jew. To be honest, like, he's probably right that the most like learned Jew, or like the most hardcore Jews look more like David than they do us. But I don't feel like it has to be that way.
Well, see, that depends. But 1,000 years ago, I think the more hardcore Jews would have been like me, and they would have looked physically more like me too. They would have looked more like a big, more sort of like normal. Like, I think I'm like bred more like an average Middle Easterner than a Jew, like in terms of like how my body and like my stuff. Like, I'm a bigger.
You actually look pretty.
Like,
if I didn't know better, I would have thought you were just like a white guy, maybe like a Italian or something.
Yeah. See, the thing is that's so interesting is like, no one can see this on the stream, but like, here's me. Like, I have this really interesting mix, and I get everything. Like, Arabs will say, are you Arab? Ashkenazi Jews will say, are you Ashkenazi? Mizrahi Jews say, are you Mizrahi? And then Europeans are like, what are you? Like, something looks a little off about you. What are you? But they can't quite say what it is. And then to anyone who's a quote POC in America, to anyone who isn't like an autist or like observes things like race, it's basically just, you're just white boy, because everyone's just white boy,
That is key though, that a lot of Jews have to understand that like being against whites is so detrimental to your own interests, because non-Jews and non-whites see Jews as like any other whites, like they don't make that distinction.
They see us as like more white than white because we're like more cosmopolitan. Yes. And they see us as like, because we're more big brain nibba and more cosmopolitan and more like nebbish, like, and like more powerful, more high status on average in a lot of instances. It's like they look at us and they're like uber whites. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's
they don't realize we're Jews. They don't realize we're Jews.
Yeah. I've always found that really funny. My earliest like examples of, or like ideals of Jews were like, because I was really into science for a while, and I still pretty much am, but like I was really into like the science sort of like the sciencey culture behind, or that a lot of Jews used to practice, like Albert Einstein, Richard Feynman, and stuff. I thought like that's the model Jew, you know, like the scholar, like the pioneer, the intellectual pioneer, like that. That's what drew me to Jewish. It's not intrinsically Jewish either, but that was like my initial sort of connection.
Your draw to the tribe.
Exactly. Yeah, I just saw like, you know, like pre-World War II, like there were all these Jewish names. Like
it's
making,
a positive
like,
point of Hebrew identification or Jewish identification for you.
Exactly. So I thought like that, like I wanted to be part of that tradition, if that makes any sense. Like I thought like to be a good Jew is to be like Richard Feynman or something, or to be like Albert Einstein. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. That totally does make sense. But like, is this the place where you're at right now, or the place where you were at prior?
No, this is where I was before, and yeah, now I don't know. It's more just like a kind of like you have to have some sort of identity, like some cultural identity, and just as you age, you like start to see the necessity of that. And for me, it's like this is the most obvious thing. That sounds really like lackluster, but I don't know. It's just kind of a gut thing. Like it's hard to articulate.
No, I totally get it. I'd like to talk more about this. Please go ahead. I'm actually quite interested.
Yeah, that's essentially it. But I do like the sort of cerebral aspect of like the Jewish archetype. So I think there is something to be preserved there for sure.
Do you think that there can be a synthesis of this cerebral archetype with masculinity? If so,
I totally
how
do.
does this look for you?
I think Richard Feynman actually is the best exemplar of that, because he was like a total womanizer, but also like super witty. Like I think if there is like a model Jew, it's him.
That's interesting. I mean, I've heard anecdotes. I think I read a portion of a book about his life, and I heard anecdotes that attest to a lot of what you're saying there.
He was pretty like anti-Jewish identity too, ironically, but I still see him as like the best. I mean, I guess Einstein is another example. Like he was a womanizer, from what I understand, but he wasn't necessarily a very handsome guy either. So,
I mean, yeah, but see, that's the thing. Is like, okay. See, here's the thing. Handsome, okay, looks is something that I really want to get into, because I have, okay, you know how Black people and Asians will critique like white beauties and have like wear the Afro power, like the Afro is beautiful, Black is beautiful, love your melanin, or for East Asians, it's like love your straight hair, love your, you know, natural eye shape and your natural nose shape. And dude, it's like, you know, like don't bleach your skin, yada yada. I feel that way about Jews, okay? Because for me, this is a point where I think David was right, okay? For Jews who are more physically Hebrew, feel like for me, I have this big, like here, I'll show it to you. Like no one on the show can see, but like, do you see this? It's like this.
What's that?
Do you see like this big intro, dude?
Yeah. My hair grows like the same way.
Yeah. It's like that, and my nose and how I look, and the fact that people were always asking me my whole life, like white people, European people, were always asking me my life, what are you? And Jews were always asking me, are you Jewish? So in those two things in tandem made me realize, like, you know, and like there's this interesting thing called like face LMS, like fakes or like sort of like face theory, and there's this theory of like, I don't even know. But the point is like Middle Easterners don't have like the same looks as Europeans where it counts. Like even little things like the fact that our eyes are slightly closer together, or the fact that we have longer mid faces, or the fact that we have slightly weaker chins, or the fact that we have slightly like, you know, it could be like the curly hair, it could be like forehead, face shape, like little things, and then just sort of being physically smaller than Europeans. Like we don't do as well as Europeans in a European beauty standard society. This is
I have to say though, I do think that like the Arab look, I mean, maybe it's just particular to Arabs, but I think Arabs are generally pretty ugly. Sorry to any Arabs like watching, but like, you know, like pure like Yemenite, like dark, like I don't know. I've just found them to always like be pretty unattractive.
Okay, no, but that's the thing is, I'm not.
Yeah, I think like
I'm
the
not talking about like a little
like
Yemen.
Like Lebanese people are very good looking.
The Mediterranean, or like you know, like Omar Borkan Al Ghala. Like there is a way of like.
There definitely is. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, here's the thing: is what was I saying? Wait, where was I just a moment ago? I was just talking about Jews and
Like,
what was I saying?
You were talking about the differences between Jewish parents.
Oh
versus
yeah.
European.
Like me, I grow out my Jewfro as a sign of resistance. And I mean, I say that ironically and satirically, but like it's like, I agree. Like, we should have our own beauty standards. You know, we should say like F your Western beauty standards. Like, we should say that. And I think that because that would make Jewish women happier and Jewish men. And although you know, this is in a lot of urban areas in America and a lot of like cool hip areas, like the cool hip thing is sort of like an ethnic kind of look. So guys like me actually, like lately, like within the course of the recent history, actually haven't had it so bad. But like me, like I'm Volcel now. Those days are behind me. But let's just say, like, if I wanted to, like things are getting easier for Jewish guys in this regard. I think in that manner, in the way that like some sort of like quote like ethnic features in guys sometimes are now kind of a bit more like, or like even like Mediterranean things are a bit more like looked at like, ooh. But I think that Jews have those features, but they don't even necessarily have it in the right way. And oftentimes a lot of those, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of even like pure Middle Eastern Jews, like Mizrahi, Sephardic Jews, like even they can look, you know, like as European as like a Greek or Sicilian person. Like I don't think they necessarily, you know, have like the most quintessential Middle Eastern features. Or I mean, I also have a theory that the Middle East, like prior, like the Arab incursions, was like, I don't want to say white looking, but
yeah, dude, this isn't a theory. The Middle East was full of people who looked like Mizrahi Jews and Lebanese people and Druze people. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Which is
not the whole Middle East, mind you, but like, yeah, like, you know what I mean. Like the Levant, especially, was like browned to a degree, as it were.
Definitely was.
Like, and this sounds like a meme, like some sort of like meme, but like no, you can actually like look at genetic studies, like compare, for instance, Bronze Age Levantine, like the DNA of Bronze Age Levantines, and it doesn't match up perfectly with like, let's say, a lot of like Palestinian Arab populations who are more close to like Hijazis, or even to a lot of Syrians. Like, it's most close to Lebanese Christians, to Mizrahi Jews, and to Druze people. And the Ashkenazi and Sephardic, they have a Middle Eastern component. They have a Middle Eastern component that's like similar to this in their own DNA, but like it's only a component rather than all of their ancestry. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I've actually mistaken like Lebanese people in the past for like, you know, just regular white people, or like maybe Armenians or like Sicilians or something. So yeah, definitely like in the past it was, I think like skin tone wise, like the whole Mediterranean was pretty similar. Like they were all pretty homogenous, just like physically.
Well, there's always been something of a mix. I mean, listen, whenever I see Lebanese people, even today, I'm like, before they open their mouths and I hear them speak Arabic, I'm like, those are the Jewish looking Jews I've seen in my life. Like, it always happens to me. I see Lebanese people and I'm like, oh, look, there go some Jews. Like, my Judar is showing off, and then they start speaking Arabic, and it's like, okay, oh, I guess they're Lebanese or Syrian or whatever.
It's like, it's too bad that Lebanese people speak Arabic, you know, because I don't feel like it's necessarily their native language. Like, I don't know what it might be, like maybe Aramaic or something. I don't know, but
their native language is more similar to ours in a lot of ways, I think.
Right. I also feel bad for Persians. Like, I have the sense that like they used to look maybe more Slavic, but they got like browned over time because I've seen like some Persians that looked like super white, like they had like red hair and blue eyes and shit. So I think the whole Middle East just got like a lot darker over time.
I think, darker, and among other things. I mean, but like, dude, that's true. I do see what you're saying. And like, again, like in the Levant, people historically, like you can look this up, their genetic studies, people historically used to resemble more the communities of like minorities in the Levant, like Druze, Lebanese Christians, and Mizrahi Jews, who are on average like have lighter skin tone, propensity for certain lighter traits. I mean, me personally, I don't care about like lightness or darkness. Like that's like my last concern. But like it wouldn't be incorrect to say that there was a quote browning that took place. But what we're really talking about is like,
I actually do think objectively, I do actually think objectively lightness generally is a sign of, I think it's a good proxy for a lot of other positive traits. Like I think lightness of skin isn't arbitrary, I guess.
Yeah, I see why you're saying that. There might be like correlation, and I know that there are causal effects of having melanin in your body, but I'm just going to counter signal.
I'm gonna counter signal whiteness just for my fellow Mizrahim because
But
like,
I'm not saying European.
like
I'm saying like white. Yeah.
No, no. Totally, I know what you mean. I totally know what you mean. I totally know what you mean. It's just like the thing about lightness is literally, it's like I come from a family, and in my family, it's literally like on my Ashkenazi and Mizrahi side, it's like white person, tan person, white person, tan person, white person, tan person. Like it just sort of alternates all around the place. You know what I mean? It's like it's not really that consistent for like Middle Easterners. Like it can sort of like like it isn't really consistent. But I know what you mean. Like think about it. Like all the okay. I mean, of course, I can point to exceptions. Like I could point to like the Inuits and Siberians and be like, oh, these people are really light skinned and they don't have that high IQs. But then again, they also do have certain types of IQ that are really high, and they also do have the big sizes. So it's like they have also high, really like good like memorization IQ and like sort of, like I think visual spatial IQ. So it's like whatever. Right. It's like you're right. Like I agree. What is your
to me, it's more just like a snap. Oh,
sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like for me, it's more just like instinctively, like when I see a really like dark-featured Arab, like I usually assume they're like dumber. It's not even something I put much thought into. It's just sort of a reflex. I don't know if that makes sense.
How do you feel when you see a Hello? All right. Hold on. I am having some technical difficulties. My guest just dropped out of the call.
Hey, sorry about that. What were you?
Yeah,
what were
no
you
problem. I was just going to say, how do you feel when you see an Ashkenazi Jew when you see like a Mizrahi Jew? Have you ever been to Israel? How do you feel about Jews? Like as an Ashkenazi Jew who grew up in the West, what was your first experience like meeting like real Sabras? Like, because for me, going to Israel, especially like as like a Jew who grew up in the West my entire life, like I'm like this. I mean, I'm a Mizrahi Jew, but like functionally speaking, I'm like any other diaspora Ashkenazi Jew. I'm like very secularized, very cosmopolitanized. You know, I like fit into the New York kind of like Ashkenazi, like kind of cosmopolitan socialite scene. Like I totally like I'm part of like the art scene and like all this dumb stuff. I mean, it's like for me going to Israel and like seeing these like Sabras be these like even seeing the Arsim, and I understand people are like, oh, Arsim, degenerate plague of society. Listen, that like actually made me happy to see that we have our own kind of like this sort of like thuggish underclass. Because as sad as that is, it's like we have. I went to Israel and I saw that we had all full spectrum, all facets of society as any healthy civilization should be. We had people working land. You know, I saw the Moshavim. I saw the way that people were living off the land and farming. And some of them did use Arab labor. And to those people, I say, you're scum. That's a no-no. Galut mentality. You're a fucking parasite, dude. You're a fucking parasite. And if you do that, you literally deserve to have those Arabs like take over your farm. Like they deserve your farm, okay? Because they're working, they should own your farm, okay? You're a cuck and you suck. But like to the people who till their own land and to seeing Jews walk around in the streets with guns, you know, and seeing them, you know, with their full like you know, they're sporting tans and they have like they have Middle Eastern features, and people are walking around in the streets with Jew furrows, and Jewish women have their beautiful like long flowing like black curly hair out, and it's like it just made me like wow, like this is what a real civilization looks like. I just felt like so amazed. So I'm curious, have you ever been to Israel or encountered Sabras, and if so, what was your experience?
I have, and I had a similar. I mean, the coolest part about it was just like I spent my whole life pretty detached from like the Jewish world, and just to be in a setting that's like just all. I mean, it was just such a fucking weird experience to like just be in like a homogenous Jewish place. It wasn't as much aesthetic for me as it was just sort of like a vibe, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. Like, I mean, the aesthetic is just part of it, but there's this sort of warm, welcoming, brotherly Middle Eastern vibe of like you are with your own people again. You know, you're in the home of your own people. It's beautiful.
Yeah, unfortunately I only went on birthright, so like I got a very like controlled visit. I didn't get to explore much.
Yeah, birthright is like one of those things where you get like carted around between like the curated, like here's what you're supposed to see, tourist crap. But like,
Exactly.
talk about the birthright experience. Were they trying to force you to like get with girls and stuff?
I wish they were. I did end up hooking up with one girl, but it was like insanely awkward, and she'd actually fucked some other guy from the trip, so it was a mess. I mean, birthright is honestly disgusting. I wish they would. It's cool that they like give you a free trip, but like it's so degenerate, dude. Like there were like 40 of us, and it was like just a mass orgy for 10 days. It was gross. Like,
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It's like literally, like I've heard some people jokingly refer to it as quote birth rate Israel because it's like this really just sort of devious ploy to get all these like young horny Jews
It totally
not
is.
have as much going for them as like the cool Jews who don't want to go to Israel, but like a Jew who wants to go to Israel, people who are back on identity in the first world in the 21st century. It's like, you're probably not as cool. You probably aren't as good with girls or guys. So it's like, oh, it's perfect. It's like, oh, we're going to work you into the little, we're going to make it like, so all these like horny Jews and Jewesses are stuck on a plane together and get carted around. And I mean, the whole thing, I mean, it's just kind of a little goofy thing. Yeah.
It is. It was definitely fun, but it was very cliquey, and I'm pretty introverted, so it's to have like be in such close contact with a bunch of people for a long time is just uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, and to me, it would just be so cringy. It's like so cringy it's like so cringy for whatever it's called, for like, because like you see all these sabras and you're like this like Galut Anglo, and like, dude, when you're like this is just like me, like my experience coming to Israel, like as a Galut Jew, you're like this like scrawny, pale, like urbanite type from New York, and then there are like these big like fucking like actual like Hebrew warriors walking around. It's like it's like it's a new class of Jew.
It's like when you introduce like a predator into like an environment that doesn't have it has a lot of like docile prey because they're not used to having predator. Like that's what happens when you introduce Israeli men into like a group of like Americanized Jewish women, because they just fucked everybody. Like those guys.
This is literally the point of birthright Israel.
Actually, it pissed off a lot of the guys, like the American Jews on the trip, because we were just like, well, we can't even fucking compete, so like why? Like,
exactly. But the thing is like hypothetically, you're supposed to go off with the Israeli women, but Israeli women, see, this is the thing. Israeli women, Middle Eastern women are alpha. Mediterranean women are alpha, but specifically like Jewish women are very alpha. And part of this has to do with being smart, and part of this has to do with like a bunch of other factors. But I really, really, it is. I mean, it's not just being smart though, because like think about it, like East Asian women are smart. I mean, it's a mixture of different traits, but it's like
I'm not a huge fan of Asian girls though.
Israeli women, even it carries over. It like Israeli women, even like the Sabras, even like the ultra nationalist Sabras. It's like, cool, you're an ultra nationalist Sabra, but you're like a materialist nationalist. You're not like super trad because you slept with like 20 dudes. I mean, it's like that's like Israeli secular nationalist right wing women. A lot of them are like
me out so much. Yeah.
Dude, it's like that, I think, to me, is another shitty byproduct of the Galut plus like masculine Jewish / Middle Eastern women,
Yeah, I think
this is why we need our religions. We need to like the Muslims kind of have it right. The Muslims practice modesty laws that are more similar to the modesty laws of ancient Jews. Just saying. Sorry, go ahead.
There do need to be modesty laws for sure. I think the Haredi Jews probably, I think they go overboard, not because they treat the women badly, but just because they try to like control. I think they just try to regulate their lives like to like such an extent that it's inefficient. But I do think it is good. It's more in the right direction than like pure secularism, like having like very strict roles for the genders.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think that honestly, like the reason Middle Eastern religions evolve is that, listen, religions and cultures evolve with people. And when I say religions evolve, I'm not looking at it from the sort of like autistic, like materialist academic perspective, sociological, anthropological, like historical type thing. Like, no, like I'm saying like religions evolve in the sense of like, it's like a prism, like God, the light of the transcendent shines through like a prism, and like the white light of the divine becomes refracted into these different colors dependent for like each civilization. and the divine manifests itself in like God, or God had manifests itself in a different way for each civilization and each unique people in a different manner. It's not, you know what I mean? It's like not, yeah, it's not like some, it's not like some like evil like religion evolved like, oh, the like it's some evolutionary thing. It's like, no, like I genuinely think that what do you call it, that like I don't know, like there's a reason why like each religion fits perfectly with each people, like your hand fits into like a personally made glove or something like that. It's like Jewish men need Judaism and Jewish women need Judaism. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree to a large extent. I don't know. I'm not like super religious, and for a while I didn't even like what's the extent of your religiosity? Like I hardly even believe in like I used to be like a pure atheist, but like now I have like a vague belief in sort of God, but I never pray or anything. Or I don't take it very seriously.
I have a belief in God basically, and I am very ignorant, and I'm very ignorant as far as like actual Jewish theology, but like I know that I have a very strong like spiritual or religious like urge within me. I just need to sort of like get more knowledge now.
Right. There's part of me, and this is like a really cynical attitude to have towards it, I have to admit, but like I feel like praying and believing in God has a lot of like fatalistic pitfalls. Like I don't know, just believing in like someone else saving you, it just feels like really fatalistic to me. Like I feel like you have to take your life into your own hands and not rely on a larger entity to save
keep in mind, like Muslims also and other religions also have this kind of fatalistic thing that they're not afraid to fight. Jews specifically have this autistic thing, like, and this thing came after the Galut, to my knowledge, like the idea that we're not supposed to pick up a single sword and we're just supposed to be passive diaspora, perma-minority cuck sheeps that get herded by whatever imperial colonial power waltz into our lands and or forces us around the globe. It's like, no, like the whole wait for Messiah and pray. If someone's being mean to you, just pray and God will sort out the problems. It's like, no, like, why did Shimon Bar Kokhba fight? Why did we fight the Amalekites? You know, why did Jews ever fight at any point in history? There were some times when God told us to fight. There were some times when we fought for ourselves, when we fought on our own to defend ourselves. And the people doing that fighting, they damn well believed in God and were much more pious Jews than most of the Jews you see walking around today. So you know what I mean, right?
I do, yeah. But I do have a question. Like, to what extent do you think? And again, I have like an overly cynical view of religion, I guess. But like, to what extent do you think like?
I understand you're a Jew.
Attributing, exactly, yeah. Well, like, to what extent do you think like attributing God to either like victories or losses for the Jews? Like, to what extent do you think that's post hoc? Like, you know, like this thing happened to us, and then afterwards we reinterpret it as.
I think it's sort of post hoc, but I used to think it was sort of post hoc, but honestly, I do think things like, not punishment necessarily, but I think things like the Galut and things like the Holocaust, they were a consequence of something that Jews did in our actions, of something about our behavior.
They definitely were.
Like, seriously, you know, like, we need to pay attention to this stuff, okay? God is trying to tell us something.
Right. Actually, my dad, I don't really know much about his beliefs, but when I asked him why, like, if he doesn't believe in God, like, why is that? And he said, well, you know, how could God let the Holocaust happen? So his belief, his disbelief in God was less intellectual and more kind of emotional.
That's so many Jews. That's like Elie Wiesel tier. That's like what every Jew in the Holocaust said. Oh, well, after what happened in Auschwitz, I can't really believe in a God in this traditional sense anymore. And listen, I'm not trying to mock people who went through that. All right, listen, I understand. It's okay. Listen, being colonized and being a minority sucks. Being a minority sucks. Being colonized sucks. Being wartime sucks. I get it. But the point is, it's like the whole you know it's like it's it's like
I wonder if there is like some kind of balance between believing in God but not being fatalist. I just don't know. I don't know if they're like in conflict with each other or if they're like totally harmonious. I just don't understand religion enough.
I don't know. I don't devote any thought to it. I just sort of believe, honestly, is the point that I'm at right now. And that, that works for me. And for some people, that's just like the materialists in the comment section are pointing and being like, oh, you're dumb. And all the Ryan Falk and Sean Last.
Oh, I don't think it makes you dumb at all.
Coming and saying you're dumb. Yeah. I know.
No, I don't think it's dumb at all. I don't think being religious or believing in God makes you dumb in any way. I think it's indicative of
Hello. Connection issues, it seems.
Hey, sorry about that. I think I lost you again. I was just going to say, I don't think believing in God makes you dumb, like, whatsoever. And I actually think believing in God, I think God is closer to the actual truth than atheism. So if you had to pick one between like, God and atheism, I think God is the right choice,
Yeah, I do know. And it was sort of an inclination like that I had felt prior to my actually sort of becoming religious.
Right.
Or at least a niggling sense like that.
Honestly respect. Yeah. Right. No, I think atheism, if of all the beliefs that you can have, atheism is probably like the most retarded.
Atheism, yeah. I mean, materialist atheism. I mean, all right, if fair. I mean, yeah, I mean, I have my critiques of atheism. Like, don't even get me started. It's just, I just think it's funny. And going back to earlier, I just think it's funny that what so many Jews like view as the big thing that makes them think God doesn't exist, like the Holocaust or the Galut, either of those things, or any of them, like European colonialism, the Galut, like basically the thing is, how could God exist if all these terrible things?
That impression is just
listen,
very refined.
We've been persecuted. We've been kicked around the globe for 3,000 years. All right. How can a just God? It's like the Peter Hitchens polemicism argument, or Christopher Hitchens polemicism argument, who coincidentally is also a Mishling. He's like, oh,
yeah, he is.
He's like, oh, yes, any god that mercilessly kills people, I would not want to have anything to do with.
Yeah, like, what a whiny, just like.
All right, dude. Yeah. Like, no, maybe it's like Jews are singled out for punishment. Maybe the God's chosen people thing is true, and God is showing us how a people should live, and it isn't a diaspora.
Right.
And maybe all of this is happening to us because we have become cosmopolitanized and rootless. And maybe the reason why the diaspora happened to us was a consequence for our own bad actions. And maybe we should try acting moral and loving ourselves and acting moral and free of hatred in our hearts and be like rise to meet our destiny, like become who we are, like Richard Spencer said.
Oh, totally. And I actually think like I have a very anthropological utilitarian view of religion, meaning like I think the belief that leads to the most success is the most valid one, sort of. So if believing in your sort of interpretation of God is the one that confers the most sort of like benefit, then that's the truer one, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. I'm curious to hear what role do things like, because I look at the victories. I look at a history of Jewish victories. I look at our victories against Rome or against Greece or whatnot, and I look at Sinan Reis, I look at Dunuas, I look at Bar Kokhba, people like him, and I have this one particular image. But I'm curious how you, with your sort of frame, how do you look at Jewish history? Because it is kind of hard not to see it as this kind of cavalcade of oppression and the Holocaust and the colonialism, and we were ethnically cleansed for 2,000 years and we lost our indigenous land. Like, we need to approach it with like a will to power and like a warrior mentality. But like, how do you reconcile Jewish history with your sort of profoundly masculine mindset and worldview?
I don't. I assume that the Jews are pretty much like any other group in the same situation would behave pretty much the same way. So I just think groups naturally come into conflict with each other because they both have, their respective interests, and things, ethnic cleansings and genocides and stuff. Those are just natural sort of expressions of like tribalism. So I don't think the Jews are particularly. I think the Jews are just very persistent about continuing to be Jews, which is why we know about their story so much more than the others. But I think like ethnocentrism and I think like Jews aren't. I mean, obviously Jews are historically unique, but I don't think that they're uniquely evil or something, and that's why they've been purged. I think that it's just naturally when you have diversity, you get conflict.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why being in Galut means being in a state of permanent conflict. As long as we live parasitically in the nations of others.
Exactly, it is parasitic. That's the problem. Is what bothers me so much is the parasitic nature of like a lot of things. I'm not like an absolutist about the diaspora. I think there are a lot of great diaspora, qualities. But generally speaking, having like being diasporic in your mind makes you more parasitic.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just inherent dynamic, and unless community,
exactly,
like unless you have a true shtetl, but even then, you end up sort of being parasitic in a different way. And actually, I have a quote on this by someone who in terms of conception of the world, in terms of ontology, in terms of like where his groundings are and where he gets things from, I have a lot in common with the materialist sort of communist or leftist thinker who is also a repatriationist and sort of an identitarian. He's A.D. Gordon. And although A.D. Gordon says the same things as Kahana and says the same things as Marcus Garvey. So I agree with a lot of what he says and some, but I don't agree with his atheism, and I don't agree with like his Western fetishism, and I don't agree with like his anti-tradition, anti-religion, new Jew crap. But like,
right.
Let me get
I think a part of that was a reaction to like the hyper religiosity of the shtetl. So Jews wanted to be European so badly that they went like in the opposite direction with the extremism. I actually have to get going.
This is the problem. So, sorry, cool. Go for it.
I do have to. You can finish up though with whatever you were going to say.
No. You say what you were going to say. Like, go for it.
I was just going to say I do have to get going, but this was like really, really fun. I'd like to do. We should do this like more regularly.
Yeah, I agree. This was a great conversation. Totally. Thank you so much for coming on. This was an awesome chat, and like, a Jew in the comment section, Judah Star High, is saying you stop rebelling against the rabbis, and I'm going to invite. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks again. And like, if you want to pop back in later, like if you grab some energy later. Oh, totally.
I'm an insomniac, so I might end up doing that.
Yeah, totally. Go for it. This is probably going to be going on for a little while. I'm going to post link in the chat. Thanks again for the channel.
Exactly. See you, man.
Peace. All right. Now I'm going to post a link in the chat. Sorry, I wasn't really reading the chat, so I wasn't really seeing it. I wasn't really seeing your messages, dear watchers of this video. So, now y'all can join. Let's see. I'm going to read the A.D. Gordon quote now for our listeners. Here we go. I posted the link in the chat. If no one joins within like the next short period, I am going to end the call after I rant a little bit to myself. Let's see. I'm posting the link. Is the link going through? Wait. Give me a second. All right, here. Let me read the quote. We are a parasitic people. We have no roots in the soil. There is no ground beneath our feet. And we are parasites not only in an economic sense, but in spirit, in thought, in poetry, in literature, and in our virtues, our ideals, our higher human aspirations. Every alien movement sweeps us along, every alien movement sweeps us along. Every wind in the world carries us. We in ourselves are almost non-existent, so of course we are nothing in the eyes of other people either. And this is a quote that really resonates with me, because think about it. What is the culture of Jews? outside, yes, we have a religion, yes, we have a language, but without this, we don't have very much at all. And why is this? It's because of the diaspora. Why is it that there is no Hebrew culture? There is no Judean, there is no Israelite culture. It's because of the diaspora. Effectively, there were things that I think could legitimately be called some semblances of Hebrew, or some like maybe Hebrew culture existing in the diaspora in the context of the, like, you get some of the art and poetry of like in sort of Afro-Asiatic, as Spengler would put it, Magian contexts, like for instance in the Umayyad Caliphate, or in the Ottoman Empire, or in the forgetting the name, slipping my mind. But sort of in a lot of those contexts, I think something kind of close to an authentic Hebrew culture was able to exist. Like, and when I say culture, I'm talking about like not high culture, but like real, beautiful poetry, beautiful architecture, beautiful, like truly beautiful art, not just like sort of shtetl scribblings. All right, because I've seen like folk art, and I really appreciate klezmer music. I like klezmer music a lot. I think that it blends a lot of sort of West Asian elements with a lot of European elements very nicely. But I think that it's just sort of it comes down to an aesthetic thing. It's like I don't know. Let's see. Are there any comments in the chat? If anyone has any comments they want me to respond to, please go ahead. I think that, yeah, like, again, about being parasitic in our culture, we don't have anything that's authentic to us. Ashkenazi culture is literally just recycled old European culture, just like how we're recycling and re-wearing old European garb. We're recycling European languages and even European pronunciations in modern Hebrew. Our system of governance in Israel, stolen Enlightenment Western wannabe nonsense. Why be second-rate Westerners when you can be first-rate West Asians, first-rate Levantines, first-rate Semites? I don't understand why you want to be knockoff, rip-off, bootleg Westerners. I want to create something authentic, and I think that we can be authentically Levantine. We can be authentically Hebrew and create a thriving, powerful, dynamic civilization that, if handled right and administrated properly, and with good people at the helm, and with moral people at the helm, I genuinely think that we might be able to have an even more militaristically and technologically advanced civilization than we currently do in the modern Israel, which is sort of bogged down by bureaucracy and democracy and red tape and things like that, as I see it. And part of this is because of this Western fetishism, is because we wanted to make it in this Western socialist or Westphalian system in terms of state design. I think that we need to de-Westernize. We need to decolonize our minds, as a lot of post-colonial advocates say. And this might be looked at in a silly manner, like, decolonize your mind. And yeah, there are silly things like, campaigning against like Western science, quote unquote, aka like empirical science. It's like, okay, yeah, dude, cool, whatever. Like that movement in like African schools and stuff. Like, yeah, okay, that's dumb. Like, I agree, that's dumb. But when I say decolonize your mind, I'm talking about like we need to unwrite the past 2,000 years plus of Westernization that has happened to our people. It's effectively how I see it. We're Jews going our own way. It's like MGTOW, JGTOW, all right? We need to be Jews going our own way, and we need to look at our own history, look at our own ancient history, and even look at some components of our history in the Galut and see and turn to that for inspiration, rather than turning to the West or even the Arab world necessarily for inspiration. We should turn into ourselves and look into our own rich history.